Welcome to part 2 of this interview. It could be a tree house. Yes, I really said that. A tree house. It can be an RV. It could be an apartment. It could be a house. It could be a room in a house. It also could be a boat. I know that sounds funny, but there are so many different things. So when we define property in short-term rentals, it has to do with the fact that it can be all sorts of different things.
Welcome to the Jennifer J. Hammond Podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day.
The last thing about some of the basics of just setting up your property is insurance, making sure you have the right insurance. And one of the things that I discovered were people who they decided they wanted to just rent out a room in their house. And they did, but they never changed their homeowner's insurance. And what I say about that is it's different because when people come and they stay in your house, they could unfortunately cause some problems. So we were talking about some of the positives, but there are negatives. And so if they cause problems in your house, it could be that they could cause damage. And do you have the insurance if that problem happens? Now, I'm going to share a story with one of the rentals that I had in a property that I had. So it was a house and I rented the house. And it was funny because I rented using Airbnb. So this is my own personal experience. And so I was renting through Airbnb, and people have an opportunity to actually communicate with you a little bit through Airbnb. And so I communicated with this group, and it was a group, and I think it was 5 or 6, and they were coming to town for a conference in Washington, D.C. And so I thought, oh, this is fine. And they're coming from California, and they're all verified. Their IDs are verified. There's a lot of things that happen through different websites. So they had been verified, and I thought everything was great. I happened to be out of town when I got a call from a police detective, a police detective. So the police detective started asking me some random questions. And I was like, what is going on? And come to find out, my guests had decided to mail to the house a whole bunch of illegal drugs. Yep, illegal drugs to my house. It was something else. So of course, as the police detective was questioning me and I was out of town, and then I explained it was an Airbnb rental, he said to me, well, we've had to come into the house, and just so you know, there's been, they mailed these drugs to the house, and obviously you didn't know anything about it. And so they were going through this whole explanation, and then they just basically said, yeah, and sorry for all the damage. And I was like, what? The damage? And they said, well, we needed to look to find if they were hiding drugs anywhere. So they did some damage to my house, the police. And so I also had learned from the insurance on what it will cover and what it won't cover. And what I realized very quickly is that it's really important to have the exact right coverage if you're going to do short-term rentals. It's not worth the risk. And I highly recommend that you talk to an insurance agent who understands short-term rentals. And there's all sorts of different ways that you can get that kind of insurance. I'm actually licensed as an insurance life and health in Florida. So I know a little bit more than the average person about insurance, but it's really important that you get the proper insurance for short-term rentals, especially if you're going to do something in your house, but also if you're going to do it for anything, whether it's a houseboat, whether it's a trailer, even if people are camping, you want to make sure that you have the right insurance for it. So again, we talked about the definitions, explaining it. We've talked about some of the tax basics. You need to understand what taxes are going to need to be charged, whether it's a hotel tax, what other kind of taxes your local area has. Then some of the legal stuff, you need to make sure that you have all your legal basics in. And that means if you need a business license, any of that, as well as we want to go on and talk about the legal entity. If you're gonna create a LLC, a C corp, what is the legal entity that will own those short-term rentals? And then the basics that you need to know about having insurance on short-term rentals. That's again something that's really important to understand. So now I wanted to shift gears. Talking about short-term rentals, let's talk about marketing short-term rentals. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can market short-term rentals. So some of the top ones are, as I was mentioning earlier, Airbnb. And then, of course, there's vacation rentals by owner. VRBO is what they call it, VRBO. And then, of course, there's individual real estate websites. There's so many individual websites that you could create your own website just for, say, for instance, you end up deciding to get 7 properties and they're all lakefront properties. So those 7 properties could all be on one website. Or like I know people who have beach rentals and they have them all on one website. So you could do that. But also you can also market through real estate agents and specifically real estate companies that do that specific short-term marketing. Like for instance, if you go out to a place where it has a lot of short-term rentals, like for instance, in Delaware, there is a place called Bethany Beach. You can also go to Ocean City, Maryland. And those areas are just known for the summer months. So for basically 3 or 4 months, you can get a lot of money for short-term rentals. They're usually by the week, not as much by the day in those areas, but there are entire real estate companies that just their niche is specializing in short-term rentals for you. So it's whatever you want for short-term rentals, but understanding that it depends on where you want to become an expert. And that's one of the those really important is there are companies out there. And what are they going to charge? It depends, depending on where you are, on what they're going to charge. But those real estate companies specialize in short-term rentals. Then there's another company which you've probably looked at before if you've ever looked at booking any kind of vacation, and that's bookings.com. And so they have all sorts of hotels on there, but they also will do individual short-term rental owners. Again, there's a big difference between bookings.com versus Airbnb. Now you have to remember Airbnb, when it was first established, the air in Airbnb meant an air mattress on someone else's floor in a house. So it started off kind of in the more, people were looking for a bargain. So if you're looking for a bargain in short-term rentals, now that's not completely true anymore, because now if you go to Airbnb, you're going to see the inexpensive all the way to the very expensive short-term rentals. And all sorts of things, whether you're looking for a castle or you're looking for a cabin in the woods, Airbnb has them. But the other thing is you should look at bookings.com. And as you're getting to know kind of what you would be interested in owning for yourself as a real estate investment, and then turning it into something that is profitable for you, you want to look at what it is you would do for marketing and how it would best serve you. One of the things about marketing, and we talked about bookings.com, there's also homeaway.com. So I don't want to forget about that one. So there's homeaway.com. That's just 6 right there. I mean, I could do an entire hour on just the marketing side of it. But why I say that is take a look at those different websites and then let's really review what is important to you. Are you looking for the ease? Are you looking for the most amount of money? Because they all have different fees on what they charge. The other thing is I'm very aware of people who decide to become a real estate investor and they never own the properties. All they do is manage the short-term rentals. So this is also part of where you need to decide What part makes you happy? Are you interested in being a manager that manages these properties, meaning that when people arrive, you're the person that makes sure that they get in, that you're make sure that, again, as we talked about, these are guests versus tenants, and the difference between a guest is that a lot of times you are providing their linens, meaning the bed sheets and the towels and such, and you are having a cleaning person come between rentals. If it's a long rental, like a month, you may have a weekly cleaning service, but a lot of times it's the check-in and the check-out for the cleaning service. But also, like with Airbnb, they're also looking for you to have amenities. Like in your kitchen, I always had coffee and tea and then some kind of creamer, and I had a lot of basics like salt and pepper and spices, and people used to rave about how much they loved the way that I had set up my kitchen. That was some of the amazing reviews I got. It was all about some of the little things that I did, that I provided in the house. For a long time there, I used to put 2 bottles of water and chocolate in each one of the different bedrooms. And people loved that. When they first arrived, they had 2 bottles of water and chocolates by the bed. And so again, it is about the little things that make it really special. And so when you go to Airbnb or vacation rental by owner or bookings.com or HomeAway, a lot of the marketing has to do with what do you do? What are you doing to make that place special? Is it going to be something where, again, somebody would want to write a wonderful review about it? And that has to do with, number one, the place itself. What have you set up? What have you created? How is that experience very special for people? And again, for a while there, like here's another example. I had I used to have a lot of families that came for one of the rentals that I had. And for the longest time, I had a high chair, and they loved it because they can rent, which I don't know if you know, if you don't have small children, if you're not a parent with small children or grandparent with small children traveling, you probably don't know, but there are all sorts of companies that will rent high chairs and cribs and different things. But they are really expensive, but they will deliver those things that you need for small children right to the Airbnb, which again, the high chair was something that everybody it was one of the things that people would go on and on about in my reviews, that how nice it was to just have that high chair there. If they were there for a week or 10 days, that having the high chair there was just such a huge help for them. And so again, you want to think about people call it sometimes your avatar, but who is your client? Who is your customer? Who is the person who would come and rent this? And who do you want to cater to? Think about if you want to cater to fishermen and they all go fishing at this particular lake, what would that house or that RV or that boat, what would it have there that would be very specific to fishermen, that fishermen would be so happy and grateful that you went that extra mile to do? Because that's what makes a short-term rental special and unique. And then once you have this history of these amazing reviews where people really loved your place, they loved the little things that you did, they loved, again, whether you do it or whether you hire a management company, how responsive you are to when things are going on, when there's an issue of one nature or another. It's really important to know that you can do anything you want as far as creating it. Again, I go back to, if you look at Airbnb, I love at the top of Airbnb, you can look and there's lakefront, there's beach, there's amazing pools, islands, national parks, tiny homes, and then they have an OMG. Then they have camping, cabins, and then, architectural designs. And then they have Arctics. Then they also have a whole category of just amazing views. So if you're somebody who just have always wanted to have an amazing view, you can look at Airbnb and you can find these exquisite views that, and they're all over the world, whether it's Florida, Orlando, Miami, or if it's Italy, or if it's, anywhere you want to be. Just like I said, if you're looking for castles or you're looking for a very specific niche, the category I laugh of the OMG is all of these really unique homes, and it's worth it. Like a house built that looks like a house, or an old train that they're doing in Copper Hill, Virginia, or their houses that literally look like a house that all of a sudden is on the water, that is a houseboat. Or just, like there's one that's an old grain factory. I mean, really, these are just really unusual. Oh, look at there. It's a covered wagon. You can go stay in a covered wagon in, where is that? Tennessee. So finding something, or you can go to Belize and look, there's some amazing places, really interesting places in Belize, all over the world. But you think about this in your backyard, why would people want to come to your area? And as a short-term rental, you can, again, you could take your profits and you could just completely change them and make them completely different. But again, this is something, as a real estate investor, is it something you love? Is it something that you would really enjoy and have fun being this kind of real estate investor with short-term rentals? And I had so many different clients that have been asking me about short-term rentals. And I started realizing that it's really important to kind of just get an overview. So today, my goal was to give you an overview, defining what is a short-term rental. It could be daily, could be weekly, could be monthly. Understanding a little basics of the legalities of understanding the regulations in your area and the tax impact, whether it's the sales tax, the capital gains tax, whatever taxes. So you want to talk to a real estate expert in your area. You want to definitely talk to an attorney in your area about the legal stuff, but you also want to talk to a tax expert in your area so that you can understand the tax implications to having a short-term rental. Those are some of the basics. But then you also really want to specialize and understand the marketing. And so there are different things about the marketing. You can just let someone else handle it, or you can do it yourself. And one of the last things I want to mention about the marketing is, like, for instance, with Airbnb, the nice part is if you stay with one website, they control the calendar, or I shouldn't say that. You control the calendar in that, like, you could block out dates if you want to go visit your property. You also have the opportunity to decide if, like, some times of the year you're going to change the price, and that's the time of the year it's going to be 3 times the price. Even in Washington, D.C., during the Cherry Blossom Festival, that whole spring break time frame, we could end up, again, tripling the price of our short-term rentals and still being able to rent them in a New York minute. So you need to decide what it is you're going to do with your pricing, but also the marketing of it is so important to understand if you're going to go through like Airbnb. And if you want to be on different websites, like if you decide you want to be on Airbnb and HomeAway, you need to figure out some websites are friendly to other websites and they will integrate that calendar so that you don't get, the scary thing that can happen is double booked, meaning that you have 2 different websites that have booked for the exact same week. That can be very, very upsetting to people. So you want to make sure that whatever you're doing to utilize short-term rentals, that you're doing whatever is going to be the best for you. So as I promised in the last little bit here, I wanted to make sure I open it up for questions. So I know I've got John Lee here. John, did you have questions about short-term rentals? I know you said you haven't done short-term rentals before. I'm curious if you have any questions.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. Very informative. Recently, I know somebody that did go to a tree house.
Did you? Yeah.
His daughter. And very interesting. Didn't have running water and a couple things like that. I mean, still had some access to amenities. And another one I seen recently too, which kind of surprised me, is there's somebody down close to some property we have. She just bought an old tour bus from band from a few years ago and restored it, and it's like a classic, which was really interesting. And I didn't know you could do that kind of stuff. And you just kind of brought that up. It's very interesting. I guess my question, though, you talked about the applications, working with some of the marketing is so huge, I know, on everything, but working with some of the websites, and I guess they take the applications, but you mentioned you had somebody come in and bring in drugs and things like that. Is there any application or anything you do besides what the websites do that you use, or is that just maybe that just happens? I know if somebody really wants to do something, they're going to do it no matter what, but I mean, just curious.
Well, I was
anything that you do separately.
I think it's a great question, John, because the thing is you do need to be, I mean, like for me, I always am very protective of my properties, and I always want to make sure that my properties are protected. It feels like I want to know that whoever's coming is really going to respect it. But one of the things is with Airbnb, it's funny, it's changed a lot over the years. You used to have a lot of conversation back and forth before somebody did it. Now they have this thing called instant book, and they can just book it and you don't have any chance to talk to them at all. And but you can also go back, even if they instant book, you can go back and look through. With Airbnb, they have to actually set up a profile. You have to upload your driver's license, and they have to give some very specifics. And then the identity has to be verified by Airbnb. So what I usually do is I take a look at that and then see if it's legitimate. It's very easy. Even as a real estate agent, a licensed agent, we have a lot of times, I'm in Washington, D.C. I've been licensed there for 25 years. And it's interesting because one thing that we would have is we would often have people who just come in the door and they just walked in the office and I don't know them from anything. And it's the same kind of thing of you like, okay, so how do I look at these people? So I have always, I hate to say Google can be your friend, but I take a little bit of time to just look and see who they are, because unfortunately, as you probably are alluding to, there are definitely some bad actors. There are some folks in there that are not good people. And like with real estate, often you're putting someone in your car that could be a stranger, and then you're driving all around with them, and you hope, and you're going to vacant homes. And unfortunately, I've done entire shows on some of the bad things that have happened, from murder to rape to other things. And the same thing with the destruction of a short-term rental. You don't want them to destroy your house. So one thing I do is I find out if they're a real person first. I know that sounds really weird, but I've actually had more than once, and probably I would say about 5 or 6 times, where somebody, it's a bot, B-O-T, it's a computer bot that and I don't even understand all the technology of why, but they try to rent the place. And the weird part is they make the reservation. So they must have a legitimate credit card, but within, a very short time, it's very easy to find. Then they'll start asking for something odd, like, I would like to get your bank account information so that I can deposit money into your account. And you're like, no. You have to use the process that's on the website, whether it's vacation rentals by owner or Airbnb. You're like, whoa. And it depends. So partly you can tell by how people interact with you, but also I usually take the time. And also there's a couple other websites. One of the ones that I use is one called BEEN Verified, BEEN Verified. And that one's a great one to look, and you can look people up and you can see also if they have criminal records. It's stuff that's public information. It's nothing that's confidential, but you can also, ironically, with Facebook and with all the social media, it's pretty easy to find out a couple basics about somebody and if they're legitimate. They have to have done a lot of, and there's that term, I don't know if you're familiar with, called catfishing, but there's, you have to do a whole lot of setting up a fake profile and a lot of fake things to really fool some of the websites these days, because again, Airbnb, their reputation is on the line if things go awry. And obviously things have gone awry. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many regulations. And one of the big things that, at least with Airbnb, vacation rental by owner, bookings.com, a lot of them, well, even bookings.com doesn't actually allow you to do a whole lot of communication beforehand, but with Airbnb and vacation rental by owner, they actually allow you to communicate with the person, but only via their website and their app. So Airbnb has an app you can use, but it's only, all the communication is done through the security of the app. And the interesting part, I found a few times where I'm talking to somebody who is from another country who does not speak English, and they're using a translation program. So sometimes I read it and I'm like, I'm sorry, what are they trying to say to me? Because I don't understand. And it's because it's going through a translation that is obviously not translating. It's a computer translation, so it's not completely legitimate. But I think it's really important to make sure that you do that extra due diligence before you have people in there. So, but everybody's different. And again, you can hire a management company to do all the checking in, the checking out, the bookkeeping, the managing of the cleaning company, all of that. But again, when you're looking at 5 times the income, sometimes if you look at it, it's well worth it. And then it's also fun because if you're an artist in any way, shape, or form, to have the idea that you could create a short-term rental in a treehouse or in, like you just said, an old school bus or an old tour bus, that can be really fun. And then just having people come, I think it's really fun to meet new people. I think one of the things that I loved when I started short-term rentals was my very first short-term rental was this group of amazing ladies who had come from Alaska. And they came from Alaska. Now, remember, it's an Airbnb, so it's like a hotel. They've paid their money. But when they arrived, they brought me smoked salmon on dry ice. And it was so thoughtful and so sweet. And I've had gifts from all over the world from people who have come and traveled and stayed in my home for a month or 2 months. And I just thought it was so fun. And I love having properties that can be a home for people. And, that's why I love HomeAway, Airbnb, vacation rentals by owner, because you have that opportunity to create something that is really, really special for people. And I think you need to keep the safety as, mindful and make sure you do whatever you want to do to make sure that they're legitimate. So I know we only have a couple minutes left and then we're out of here. I always like to keep on time. So John, did you have any other questions?
I just real quick. I know Airbnb was originally because of the air mattresses, which kind of surprised me. But I'm a big fan of air mattresses because they don't take up much space and they're very comfortable. It reminds me of the old water beds as far as I really love, and
yes.
You can't hardly get those anymore. But do you keep any of those around for extra guests, or does anybody maybe bring in their own and sneak in extra guests that you didn't count on? And is there extra charges or anything like that? I'm just kind of curious on that.
Yes. And number one, I always keep extra air mattresses in any one of my short-term rentals because I don't mind at all. One thing is sometimes one of my rentals was a 3-bedroom, but you end up with 4 people and they're all adults and nobody's sleeping in the same bed. Like they're 4 adults traveling together for a conference. So either somebody, and I always had a pull-out couch. So I had a pull-out couch and an air mattress. And I always wanted to make sure they had both. And one of them was, it was an air mattress. So you could put it in one of the bedrooms if you just wanted an extra bed in one of the bedrooms, or you could put it in the living room and then someone could pull out. Some people, again, like you, I find that the air mattresses are quite comfortable. And so I prefer to sleep on an air mattress than a pull-out couch. But I found that both are really good. And then to your question about if there's an extra person, yes, usually you have all of the websites will give you the opportunity to charge an additional amount and it could be just a flat fee. I just pay $50 for each additional person, or it could be an amount per night for an additional person. And yes, especially when you have younger people who come to, like the surfers that came from California that mailed my house drugs. and then had the police come, those guys, there were more than they had said. And again, you don't have to charge extra for the additional people, but I like to know who's coming because again, it's the wear and tear on your house as well. So you want to make sure that you are again, doing what is best for your house and for your property. Short-term rentals can be a great investment for people, but you need to understand kind of all the ins and outs of it. So let's see. So do you have any other questions?
That's pretty good. That's something I've always thought about is doing something like that because I prefer to do that. I know many years ago for a couple of decades now, we've been going to Edisto, South Carolina, which is a city island just south of Charleston. And they kind of had that to begin with because you always went and stayed in somebody's house, which they didn't really have a lot of hotels. And I always thought that was great. I was wondering, though, on your personal things, because down there what they did is they would have like an owner's closet or maybe a room or even section where they lock their own stuff up. I just wonder if you ever have any, if how secure your stuff is when you have people coming in there. I mean, obviously you wouldn't be leaving jewelry and things like that around, but is there any extra precautions you take, Jennifer?
Yeah, and I learned that again, kind of the hard way. One, that people break things all the time. That's just part of the wear and tear of the house. So I learned to buy all the dishes and such from IKEA. And then, of course, many things get legs and leave in the kitchen because I always had a kitchen stocked with all sorts of tools and stuff. And I learned that it's just part of it. And you can have an inventory and you literally go through and you have somebody who counts how many forks and how many knives and how many spoons. And it never was that important to me. When I noticed things were gone, then obviously I replaced them, but I always tried to make sure there was an abundance of things in there. But I also did recognize that. And so, yeah, for me, I had an owner's closet. So everything that was personal was locked away. But I left games out for people to play, whether it was checkers, chess. And I always had a collection of DVDs so that people there was a cable and they could use obviously their streaming services, but I also made sure that there were DVDs so that I provided the extras that really made it special. And again, the reviews were just so many amazing 5-star reviews where people were just absolutely, they love the homey feel. And you're like me, John, when I travel, I actually love that. I remember I got the opportunity to go to watch a race in Dover, Delaware. And it was so much fun. I love the guy. He actually left me a bottle of wine for when I checked in, which I thought was a wonderful touch. And then he had like a common area. He had like these 3 little cabins. And it was so much fun to be there. And when you went outside with your bottle of wine, everybody else had a bottle of wine. And we all kind of got to meet the other people who were hanging out in the cabins. So I think it can be as special as you want it to be and whatever you want it to create. But yeah, you should definitely have like an owner's cabin or some kind of closet that you lock away that is the stuff that you don't want broken or the stuff that is your personal stuff. And again, sometimes people prefer to bring their own linens and you should be prepared for that because they may want to just take all your linens off and use their own. They travel with their own towels and linens. That's totally fine too. But just be prepared for that kind of stuff. So we're right at the top of the hour. So I want to say I always love to stay right on time, as you know, because I've been on the radio on Sirius XM for so long. I always like to make that hour perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to stop the live stream. Yay!
Hi, I'm Jack Canfield. You may know me as the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And if you want more help in getting from where you are to where you want to be, I want to encourage you to listen to the Jennifer Hammond Show